So what does she do?
Well, she gets to forgive you.
She's the one who's wrong.
Doesn't matter.
When Roseanne premiered in 1988, it quickly became one of the most influential sitcoms on American television. Unlike many family comedies of the time, it didn't glamorize suburban life or show picture-perfect homes. Instead, Roseanne gave viewers a gritty, realistic glimpse into the struggles of the working class. It followed the Connor family, Roseanne, her husband Dan, and their children, as they navigated everyday problems with humor, sarcasm, and heart. For nearly a decade, it stood out for breaking TV's polished mold and addressing issues like unemployment, domestic challenges, and gender roles in a way that felt authentic. The show wasn't just another sitcom, it was a cultural touchstone. Roseanne Barr, both the star and creator, was unapologetically bold, injecting her real-life perspective into the character. Audiences either loved her brash style or found it controversial, but one thing was clear: Roseanne didn't shy away from tough topics. That was part of what made it groundbreaking, and also what made it dangerous. The very quality that made the show so popular was the same quality that often got it into trouble. Throughout its run, Roseanne faced criticism, censorship attempts, and network battles over its raw approach. Episodes that addressed subjects like teen intimacy, birth control, homosexuality, and racism stirred heated debates among TV executives and advertisers. But the show pushed through because viewers connected with its honesty. By the time the series ended in 1997, Roseanne had cemented itself as one of the defining sitcoms of its era. Yet, its revival in 2018 brought the show back into headlines in a very different way. Viewers were excited to revisit the Connors, older but still relatable, still struggling in America's ever-changing economy. The revival was a ratings success at first, proving the Connors story still resonated. But it was also more politically charged, with Barr using her platform to highlight current divides in society. That set the stage for what became one of the most shocking collapses of a television revival in modern history. While earlier seasons of the original Roseanne had its share of eyebrow-raising episodes, the revival leaned even harder into hot-button topics. Some episodes focused on addiction, veteran struggles, and the growing political polarization between families. Critics praised the show for daring to tackle subjects most sitcoms avoided. At the same time, others argued it was treading too close to real-world politics, risking alienation of parts of its audience. What ultimately pushed the show off the air wasn't just one line or one moment in isolation. It was the environment Roseanne had created for itself. Barr's humor was often seen as edgy, but by 2018, comedy was being judged under a much sharper lens, particularly when it touched issues of race or identity. The revival series attempted to walk that fine line, but eventually, the balance tipped. In one episode, Roseanne wakes up and makes a remark about how she had been too busy to watch Blackish or Fresh Off the Boat, two popular sitcoms that centered around minority families. On the surface, it may have seemed like a throwaway gag, but it immediately triggered backlash. Critics argued it dismissed and diminished two groundbreaking shows representing voices that had long been underrepresented on television. This moment became symbolic of the larger problem. Roseanne Barr's comedy, once celebrated for calling out social hypocrisy, was now being criticized as insensitive and tone-deaf in a new cultural era. What once would have been brushed off as just Roseanne being Roseanne was now seen as a reflection of harmful attitudes. The network initially stood by the revival, emphasizing its popularity and high ratings. But the controversy around the joke was amplified by ongoing tensions outside the show. Roseanne Barr was active on social media, often making provocative statements. When combined with the backlash from the Blackish/Fresh Off the Boat line, the situation became combustible. Sponsors grew nervous, networks were pressured, and the tolerance for pushing boundaries, once Roseanne's superpower, was wearing thin. What made this moment so pivotal is that it wasn't just a scripted line, it blurred with Barr's real-life public image. For many viewers and critics, it confirmed a growing discomfort about whether the humor of Roseanne still had a place in modern television. By May 2018, things boiled over. ABC suddenly canceled Roseanne despite its strong ratings, citing that certain remarks Barr made publicly outside the show, went against the network's values. While it was the off-screen controversy that sealed the deal, many industry insiders pointed to the on-screen joke as the start of the unraveling. That line was the trigger that reignited debates about whether the show was mocking or uplifting marginalized voices. The fallout was swift and intense. The cancellation shocked fans who had grown attached to the Connors all over again. For ABC, the move was financially risky, as Roseanne had been its biggest hit in years. But the network calculated that keeping it on air could damage its reputation beyond repair. Interestingly, while the original show ended on a bizarre note with its surreal final season, the revival ended in scandal. Roseanne Barr herself was pushed out of the spotlight, but the rest of the cast wasn't ready to let go of their characters. Within months, ABC introduced The Connors, a spin-off that continued the story without Roseanne. The Connor family lived on, but Roseanne's character was killed off, marking a definitive end for one of television's most complicated figures. When people look back at Roseanne, it's tempting to think only of its shocking end in 2018. But the truth is, the show had been stirring up waves of controversy from the very beginning. What made it stand out was also what often pushed it into hot water, scenes that went further than most sitcoms ever dared to go. These moments were groundbreaking for some, offensive for others, and in many cases, they laid the groundwork for the ultimate downfall of the series. One of the earliest controversies came when Roseanne and Dan confronted their teenage daughter, Becky, about birth control. At a time when most family sitcoms stuck to safe topics like curfews and school projects, Roseanne went headfirst into the realities of teenage sexuality. The scene was played with humor, but it was also blunt. Becky admitted she was thinking about becoming intimately active, and Roseanne had to balance her natural protective instincts as a mom with her belief in being honest and practical. For many parents watching at home, it was relatable. They saw themselves in Roseanne's awkward attempts to guide her daughter through something complicated. But for conservative audiences and advertisers, it crossed a line. They accused the show of promoting teenage intimacy. Complaints poured in, and networks had to defend the choice to air such a storyline. Yet, the controversy only added to the show's reputation for being fearless. One of the most famous and most debated scenes happened in season 6. Roseanne, while out at a bar, ends up in a situation where she receives a kiss from another woman, played by Mariel Hemingway. This was in 1994, long before LGBTQ+ representation was commonplace on network TV. The scene lasted only a few seconds, but it sparked outrage. Some ABC affiliates refused to air the episode. Sponsors threatened to pull their ads. Critics debated whether Roseanne had gone too far by putting same-sex intimacy on primetime television. On the other hand, LGBTQ+ advocates praised the show for being bold and for refusing to act as if queer lives didn't exist. For Roseanne Barr, this was exactly the kind of cultural boundary pushing she believed television needed. She stood firm, saying that working-class families like the Connors lived in the real world, and in the real world, you would encounter gay people. To her, pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Another controversial scene came when Jackie, Roseanne's sister, was revealed to be in a mistreating relationship. This wasn't a storyline that got brushed off with a joke or a single episode resolution. Instead, the show treated it seriously. Jackie, normally the tough and independent character, was shown breaking down in front of Roseanne, describing how her boyfriend had hit her. It was shocking for audiences used to sitcoms where problems were solved in 22 minutes. Suddenly, viewers were seeing the raw reality of domestic issues, and it was uncomfortable. Some praised the bravery of the storyline, while others argued that it didn't belong in a comedy. For Jackie's character, however, the moment gave her more depth and showed that sitcoms could do more than make people laugh. They could make people think. Even before the 2018 revival, one of the most infamous scenes in Roseanne came during its final season in 1997. The Connor family, long portrayed as financially strapped and scraping by, suddenly won the lottery. Overnight, the blue-collar struggles that had defined the show vanished. The Connors bought fancy things, went on trips, and lived like millionaires. For many fans, it felt like a betrayal. The entire appeal of Roseanne had been its authenticity. People didn't watch it to see the Connors living the high life. They watched because they saw their own struggles reflected in the Connors story. The scenes of Roseanne and Dan suddenly enjoying wealth rang false, and critics hammered the show for losing its identity. Then came the biggest twist of all. In the final episode, Roseanne revealed that the entire last season had been written as part of her character's novel. In her monologue, she explained that much of what viewers had seen wasn't real. Dan had actually died of a heart attack, and many plot lines had been changed in her writing to cope with grief. It was a shocking scene, but it also left many viewers angry. They felt manipulated, as if the show had pulled the rug out from under them after years of loyalty. Roseanne Barr was never shy about bringing politics into the show. While not every episode was explicitly political, there were scenes sprinkled throughout that reflected her own worldview. For example, Roseanne often made sarcastic remarks about bosses, corporations, and government policies that kept working-class people struggling. These lines may have seemed like jokes, but they resonated deeply with some viewers and alienated others. Roseanne gave voice to frustrations that millions of Americans felt, but in doing so, she often walked a fine line between comedy and social critique. Over time, those lines blurred more and more until critics began accusing the show of pushing an agenda. Fans couldn't help but wonder where the cast are now. The heart of the show, Roseanne Barr's brash humor and no-nonsense personality, made her both a television icon and a lightning rod for controversy. After the original run of Roseanne ended in 1997, she dabbled in talk shows, stand-up comedy, and even politics, running for president in 2012. When the show returned in 2018, Barr was once again the central figure, but her career took a dramatic downturn after a racist tweet led to her firing and the show's cancellation. ABC quickly rebranded the show as The Connors, continuing the story without her. Since then, Barr has largely retreated from mainstream Hollywood, focusing on stand-up tours, podcasts, and speaking to her core fans. Though her mainstream career never fully recovered, she remains a polarizing figure with a dedicated following. John Goodman, who played the lovable but sometimes hot-headed Dan Connor, remains one of the most successful cast members. After Roseanne, Goodman built a powerhouse career in both film and television. He appeared in classics like The Big Lebowski, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, and voiced Sully in Pixar's Monsters Incorporated franchise. When the revival became The Connors, Goodman stayed on as the family patriarch, continuing to earn praise for his warm but complex portrayal of Dan. Off-screen, Goodman has spoken candidly about his struggles with alcoholism and weight, crediting lifestyle changes for helping him turn his health around. As Roseanne's quirky and emotional sister Jackie, Laurie Metcalf was one of the show's secret weapons. After Roseanne, Metcalf became a respected character actress, appearing in series like Desperate Housewives and The Big Bang Theory, where she played Sheldon's mom. She also found major success on stage, winning multiple Tony Awards. Like Goodman, Metcalf reprised her role in The Connors, where Jackie continues to bring both humor and heart to the family struggles. Sarah Gilbert, who played the sarcastic and witty Darlene, went on to have a successful TV career. She created and co-hosted the daytime talk show The Talk, which gave her a whole new audience beyond her sitcom roots. Gilbert also became the driving force behind the 2018 revival of Roseanne. After Barr's firing, it was Gilbert who pushed for The Connors to continue, ensuring the cast and crew kept working. On the show, Darlene has become one of the central characters, reflecting Gilbert's key role in keeping the Connor family alive on TV. Michael Fishman, who played the youngest Connor child, DJ, stepped away from acting for much of his adult life, focusing on writing, directing, and behind-the-scenes work. He returned for the revival and The Connors, reprising his role as DJ, now a grown man raising a daughter while his wife serves in the military. However, Fishman left The Connors after several seasons, with the storyline explaining that his character moved overseas with his wife. Off-screen, Fishman has been active in charitable causes, particularly around youth programs and mentorship. Lacey Goranson was the original Becky Connor, though she left during the show's run to attend college. The role was then played by Sarah Chulka, which became a long-running joke on the series. In the revival and The Connors, Goranson returned as Becky full-time. Her character has had some of the most emotional storylines, including struggles with alcoholism and single motherhood, reflecting the show's commitment to tackling real-world issues. Though not the original Becky, Sarah Chulke became a fan favorite during her time on Roseanne. Afterward, she found even greater success on Scrubs, where she played Dr. Elliot Reed. She also appeared in shows like How I Met Your Mother and lent her voice to Rick and Morty. Chulke made guest appearances in the Roseanne revival and The Connors, playing a different character, a fun nod to longtime fans. Estelle Parsons played Beverly, Roseanne and Jackie's eccentric and often critical mother. After Roseanne, Parsons continued her successful career in theater and television. She reprised her role in both the revival and The Connors, still delivering sharp one-liners well into her 90s.